Yeah, hi there, and I'm going to give you some comments on your integrated writing practice test that you submitted in the English language program here at California State University, San Bernardino. So I have read and scored your essay, and I'm going to go over it right now. So let's see what we can do to strengthen your writing. So I'm going to put you at 3.5 out of 5, 22 points out of 30, or 82 out of 100, right? And let's take a look at your very first paragraph here. And on the right side, I have the lecture and the reading passage here. So if we need to clarify any points, we have it right here to look at. All right? Okay, in the beginning here, so here you have creates a more repressed society, and then you say social networks are a false sense of friendship. But if you're going to state 2 points about the reading passage here, then you want to state 3, right? It doesn't really make much sense what you're trying to do here. So watch this. I'm going to say here, the author believes social networks take away face-to-face interaction, create a false sense of community, and maybe cause many users to become addicted. And then you can say, however, the speaker in the listening passage casts doubt on each of these claims. So you don't need to do too much here. The main thing here is you're stating what the relationship is. You're stating the 3 points mentioned in the reading passage, and then you show how the lecture disagrees with each of those points. Okay, in the next passage you say, first of all, the reading passage and lecture argue about, you want to say this, whether or not social networks take away face-to-face interaction. And then here, you want to argue, you want to mention what that main point is. If you go to the reading passage, the actual topic sentence is stated at the end. It says, social networks have taken the place of face-to-face interaction that takes away much needed human interaction. So the author you have social replaced face-to-face interaction. Then you might say something like, in the past, people built friendships over time. We could probably say this. So people built friendships over time by seeing and hearing facial expressions, intonation, and sentence rhythm. When they had face-to-face interaction. Yeah, maybe you could take this idea here and put it after, so we'll say in the past. People built friendships over time by seeing and hearing facial expressions, intonation, and sentence rhythm when they had face-to-face interaction. However, the author argues maybe that social networks have replaced these important face-to-face interactions. On the other hand, the lecturer thinks that soldiers and housewives communicated by writing letters in the past, and social networks can work in the same way, which provide intercommunication all over the world. Maybe we'll combine these two sentences maybe with so. Okay, so let's follow what we did over here. So we have the reading passage and the lecture argue about whether or not social networks create a false sense of friendship. According to the reading passage, the author believes that friendship has changed negatively because of social networks. Friendships will be made by simply logging onto a website rather than being built over time. See, the problem is you're copying sentences too much here. So you say, it says friendship will be made simply by logging onto a website and sending digital requests rather than being built over time. You say friendship will be made simply by logging onto a website rather than be built over time and interaction. So this sentence is causing you trouble. In fact, you could probably do this. Friendships would be made by simply logging onto a website rather than being built over time and interaction. So you need to put that in direct quotes because that's exactly what that is. If you don't, that's considered plagiarism. So I could lower your score based on that. Be careful. The TOEFL will definitely lower your score when you do something like that. Right now you're at 3.5. If you do this a few more times in here, it's going to cause trouble. So you got to be careful. Remember, your purpose is to paraphrase, which means use your own grammar and your own vocabulary to re-explain the ideas. Okay, let's go to the lecture. So it says the lecturer thinks people can make friends. We might put with people. Okay, let's say so the lecture thinks people can make friends with people on social networks even when they don't meet, we might say, face to face. In the past, people wrote letters to make friends. Might want to say, similarly, social networks. I'm going to say social networks are simply another way to make friends in a technological society. Yeah, and I think that gets it. I think you have more or less the most important ideas there. Let's read over this one more time. Second of all, the reading passage lets you argue whether or not social networks create a false sense of friendship. According to the reading passage, the author believes friendship has changed negatively because of social networks. In fact, the author states, friendships, quote, will be made by simply logging onto a website rather than being built over time and interaction. Then you might want to say something like, therefore, these types of friendships are not authentic. However, the lecturer thinks people can make friends with, maybe let's put others here, on social networks even when they don't meet face to face. In the past, people wrote letters to make friends. Similarly, social networks are simply another way to make friends in a technological society. Okay. Okay, in this paragraph, third of all, the reading passage and the lecture argue about whether or not social networks cause addiction. So be careful about that whether or not thing. So this is, you know how to use it. You use it in the last paragraph, right? But we have the reading passage lets you argue about whether or not social networks cause addiction. According to the reading passage, the author thinks many users are addicted to social networks. A social network is the primary activity of the day and it has overtaken people's time. In contrast, you might say, I think this is important to show that relationship there. So in contrast, the lecture believes, and I think it looks at the word addiction as a different idea here. It says, if social online networks are the new norm in modern society, then addicted to social networks may not carry as much weight. So it's trying to downplay that. It said social networks are now part of the social norm, so we have to redefine what addiction means. Because they're saying this is kind of a necessary and normal part of our day-to-day customs now of modern society. Let's see how you rephrase this. The lecture believes people believes that addiction to social networks may not carry, you might want to say, as much weight because social networks are now part, not a part, they are a part of. Yeah, so be careful there, you're not hearing everything correctly. You see what it's saying here? It says that social networks are now part of the social norm. You thought I was saying are not a part of the social norm, but that's not what I'm saying. It sounds similar, but you've misrepresented part of that lecture. People addict to social networks, everyday customs, American society. Now, we'll probably need to change this. So in contrast, the lecture believes that addiction to social networks may not carry as much weight because social networks are now part of the social norm. Those who do not use social you probably say something like this. Then maybe say something like this. So therefore, people do not use social networks. It means they refuse I'm going to say to integrate. They refuse to integrate into current technological society. Therefore, people do not use social networks. It means they refuse to integrate into current technological society. Okay, I think we're pretty good there. So in conclusion, the reading passage in the lecture. Now you're using similar, kind of a similar sentence in the beginning here, which you don't want to do. So we need to rewrite this. You want to show that you got a variety of different kinds of sentence styles and grammar. So I'm not getting that exactly. So let's get rid of this and make a quick change. Yeah, I'm going to modify your conclusion like this. In conclusion, the author in the reading passage and the speaker in the lecture clearly have contrasting views regarding the value of social networks in our society. All right, so let's read the whole thing one more time. According to the reading passage, the author believes social networks take away face-to-face interaction, create a false sense of friendship, and cause many users to become addicted. However, the speaker in the listening passage casts doubt on each of these claims. First of all, the reading passage and the lecture argue about whether or not social networks take away face-to-face interaction. According to the reading passage, in the past, people built friendships over time by seeing and hearing facial expressions, intonation, and sentence rhythm when they had face-to-face interactions. However, the author argues that social networks have replaced these important face-to-face interactions. On the other hand, the lecturer thinks soldiers and housewives communicated by writing letters in the past, so social networks can work in the same way, which provide intercommunication all over the world. Second of all, the reading passage and the lecture argue about whether or not social networks create a false sense of friendship. According to the reading passage, the author believes friendship has changed negatively because of social networks. In fact, the author states, quote, friendships will be made by simply logging onto a website rather than being built over time and interaction, end quote. Therefore, these types of friendships are not authentic, argues the speaker. Actually, argues the author. So what I did here is I put this into quotations and then I included a sentence after it to do some analysis there to help show that I can not just use a quote, but I can offer some explanation after that. However, the lecturer thinks people can make friends with others on social networks even when they don't meet face to face. In the past, how about put a word like for example in there? In the past, for example, people wrote letters to make friends. Similarly, social networks are simply another way to make friends in a technological society, the speaker contends. Third of all, the reading passage and the lecture argue about whether or not social networks cause addiction. According to the reading passage, the author thinks many users are addicted to social networks. A social network is the primary activity of the day and it has overtaken people's time. In contrast, the lecture believes that addiction to social networks may not carry as much weight because social networks are now part of the social norm. In fact, those who use social networks are not addicts at all, asserts the speaker. And those who do not use social networks are becoming the abnormal members of society who are repressed. Therefore, the speaker claims, if people do not use social networks, it means they refuse to integrate into current technological society. In conclusion, the author in the reading passage and the speaker in the lecture clearly have contrasting views regarding the value of social networks in our society. And there you go. So that takes your essay and turns it into 5.5 out of 5 or 30 points out of 30. So for the upcoming final exam, here are some things you want to do if you want to score higher. Right now you're 82, right? Okay, don't plagiarize. You only did it with one sentence. But still, if you include exactly what was said in the reading passage or the lecture, you need to put that into quotations. Secondly, you need to do even better with the voice markers. You want to use more of those. You remember we talked about in class maybe 16, up to 16 different voice markers in the integrated writing practice test. You can do a little bit better there. The last thing that you can improve on is your grammar. Sometimes in this case, you're a little bit limited with the whether or not. This is a noun clause using whether or not, and that kind of lowers your score a little bit. And I think you did misrepresent maybe one or two ideas in there, nothing on a large scale. But all of those little things, they have an effect on your overall score. So you want to be careful and try to avoid some of these things when you do the final exam.